Hello, everyone. My name is Michael,
And I'm Ivana.
and together we did this project on the Jewish culture. So, just a quick overview for the heritage of Jewish people. Um, so, the country of origin is Israel. That's where most Jewish people currently reside, almost 42%. And the rest resides in other countries such as the US, France, the UK, and Canada, and many other countries. The current population is estimated to be 14.2 million people, and as we said, most of them reside in Israel. So the capital of Israel is Tel Aviv, as many of you know, and Jewish people have many ethnicities. So the first one is Ashkenazi, which basically refers to Jewish people from Eastern Europe um, and Germany. The second one is Sephardic, which basically refers to Jewish people who come from Spain. And the last one is Mizrahi, which refers to Middle Eastern Jews. So those who are from Iran, Iraq, countries in the Middle East, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, they're all considered Mizrahi Jews. Um Politics in Israel, they have a government that's based on democracy. However, they have a president, but the president doesn't hold the power. The power is basically the power belongs to the prime minister. The president's role is just ceremonial. Um Now, the reasons for immigration. Many Jewish people immigrated to the U.S. During the Holocaust. Even prior to the Holocaust, they faced religious persecution and oppressive legislation that made millions of them travel to countries that accepted Jewish people and where they didn't face as much persecution, such as the U.S. Now, moving on to communication. The dominant language is Hebrew. That explains why they were called the Hebrews in the Old Testament. In their book, the Torah, which is basically the first five books in the Old Testament. So, but along with Hebrew, there are other languages such as Aramaic and hybrid languages such as Ladino and Yiddish. So, like, as I mentioned earlier, since Jewish people come from many countries, for instance, Germany, German Jews formed a language that's basically a combination of German and Hebrew, and that language is Yiddish. Many of these languages are extinct, and basically the only one is Hebrew, and some Jewish people still they kept Yiddish, but the rest of the languages kind of died out. Now in the Jewish culture, there is a communication pattern that's called cooperative overlapping, which is basically when someone is talking and the other person is like kind of talking over them. It's a conversationalist style, but it's not intended to be rude. It's rather to show interest and engagement in the conversation. But many people might interpret it as the other person is being rude or cutting them off, but it's not. Now, when it comes to naming, Jewish people the Ashkenazi Jews, they tend to name their kids after relatives who passed away, just to, in a way, keep them alive. Sephardic Jews, on the other hand, name their kids after relatives who are alive and relatives who are, dead. But they don't name their kids, like two kids. They don't give the same name to two kids, because basically they try to counteract evil eye, so that's their rationale behind it. Moving on to family roles and organization. Family is very important in the Jewish culture. The expectation is for Jewish men and women to get married when they after they graduate college. Also, they're expected to have children because children are they're valued in the Jewish culture. Also, children are expected to attend Hebrew school to kind of like teach them the culture and the tradition, and as I mentioned, marriage is important. All people are expected to marry and raise a family. So marriage is basically a holy union in Judaism. It's highly regarded as opposed to premarital relations. We're gonna get to that in the next slides. Now, when it comes to workforce issues, there is strong emphasis on self-reliance, which basically allows many of them to take, leadership roles. Also, many Jewish people observe certain holidays, and these holidays require them to take off. They're not allowed to work on these holidays. Also, the Sabbath, which is Saturday, they're not allowed to work. So it starts Friday night and it ends on Saturday during sunset. Also, many Jews believe in balance in between work life and family. So now I'm going to talk about bicultural ecology. So Jews are extremely diverse. They come from many countries, as I mentioned earlier. So Ashkenazi Jews, they're from Europe, they have light features, they're fair in complexion, versus Ethiopian Jews, they're a little darker with darker features. Also, Jewish people, they have many genetic diseases because of the founder effect, which is it's an effect that basically means there is reduced genetic diversity. So, as I mentioned before, Jewish people, they marry within the culture. So, because of that, there is limited genetic diversity. So that results in many genetic disorders, such as a Gaucher's disease, which is prevalent among Ashkenazi Jews, and Tay-Sachs, cystic fibrosis, which are prevalent among Jews as well. So now, when it comes to high-risk behaviors, Jewish people refrain from doing drugs. Also, tattoos, they're prohibited by the Torah. Also, as I mentioned before, premarital sex is not approved in the Jewish tradition. However, nowadays, Reformed Jews, they engage in these kind of behaviors, but old-fashioned Jews, they disapprove of them. Also, alcohol, it's in the Torah, alcohol use was common, and that's why many holidays revolve around alcohol, such as Passover and Yom Kippur and so on. Now Ivana will talk about nutrition and the rest of the slides.
The Jewish diet is governed by laws known as kosher and kashrut. Jewish people are only allowed to eat animals that have split hooves and chew their cud, such as cows and sheep. Fish must have fins and removable scales. The very important factor is that meat is prepared in a certain way, and in addition to it, meat cannot be served with dairy products together. Children are very important in a Jewish household. Women are highly encouraged and expected to have children. Pregnant women are kept away from stressful situations, and what is interesting that the male children are circumcised 8 days after birth. Jews are buried immediately after the death in a plain pine box. Autopsies are a topic of taboo. They have something that is called Shiva, which is the week-long period of mourning following a loved one's death. Mourners will gather daily at a relative of the deceased home and sit in Shiva for about 7 days. There are 3 main denominations, which include Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox, and their level of spirituality differs. Spiritual leaders are known as rabbis. They are the teachers, and they follow the Old Testament of the Bible. Here are some interesting facts about the healthcare practices. Mental and physical care are very important for Jews. Euthanasia is forbidden. Verbalization of pain is common and accepted, and also ultra-observant women may separate from the community during their menstruation. And physicians are highly respected in the Jewish community. Jews account for about 28% of all Nobel Prize winners in medicine, and some Jewish people may request a physician that is the same sex as they are. Thank you.
All right, thanks.